Hi and welcome to another video from the CTAG Clinic. My name is Dr. Mike Lloyd and I'm the Clinic Director. I'm going to be looking at a question today that one of the subscribers has mentioned related to the husband who has dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. And this was regarding that she noticed that the husband, sometimes when dissociates, has an alter who seems to have very strong positive emotional reactions to some other people. And she has some concerns as to whether she thinks that this might mean that the husband might be attracted to other people, and that could be very difficult for them both. But actually, there may be something else happening within the framework of DID. This will also apply to other specified dissociative disorder, OSDD, in slightly different ways in terms of the way that behaviour might actually come. So it might be more influential from inside, or it might be related more to behaviour on the outside. So it depends. And what's taking place is that sometimes when alters are present, so either internal or external, that they can have very, very strong emotional responses to people in the outside world. And this might seem quite confusing or quite disconcerting, and certainly can be quite troublesome for people or whoever's running the system to manage this, because, obviously quite unexpected things can take place. These can be very strong negative reactions in that the person might feel an intense dislike or even hatred or rage or really powerful feelings towards somebody that they may have only just encountered, and that could be from an internal part. Or it could be that they feel a huge attraction or a very positive liking, or even feelings of desire or love, and all of those kind of tendencies can be taking place. Now in the non-dissociative world, so people that are not dissociative, they can experience sort of strange feelings that, for example, I've encountered people that I've only just met and have a feeling like I've known them for ages and ages, and just kind of really just slip into a conversation or a sense of being with that person that feels extremely comfortable, and you walk away with a really positive reaction. May never see that person again, thinking, wow, that was really quite something. Or for some reason might also think that I really don't like this person, there's something about them which just sets me on edge, and I find that very difficult to understand in the moment. But if I take some time to realize it, it could be there's a physical thing that they remind me of somebody from my past in a positive or negative way, or the way that they talk, or the way that they act, or some of the stuff that they do or say can be reflected. And in a way, it's like a trigger, but not in a traumatized way, just in the terms of how we understand our relationships and what mind maps are being created within our head for the relationships that we have with people that we've met throughout our life. So these things are always very influential, and that's fair enough, because I can make sense of it and many people can make sense of that, and you stop and you think, oh, that reminds me of somebody, so therefore that's why I felt like that. Nice and easy. Now within dissociation, especially in the complex forms of DID and OSDD, this can be played out in a very, very different way, and I'll try and explain and give some sense out of that, how I best see it. Because attachment is such a huge part of our traumatic experience, leading to dissociation being sort of a primary defense system, the way that people relate, the way that our experience gears our relationships towards other people is fundamental to the way that we understand how to react and respond to people around us. So our threat system, our survival response system, is very much organized around trying to make sense of whether we feel safe or whether we're not. Are we in threat? Are we in danger? Or are we not? And the people around us and the sense that they give out, or what they look like, or how they behave, can trigger and set that defense system on high alert very, very quickly. But it can also have the opposite effect. So an attachment system can be about a need that a person has, and they may see a person who they feel fulfills that need, and they may feel a very strong attachment or a want to move towards that person, to feel loved, to feel cared for, to feel held, for all of those different things that might be taking place within the attachment system. So let's say the person who runs the system, or the individual, is sort of like wandering through life, meets somebody, has a reasonably neutral interaction with them, and yet is left with this feeling of this intense either dislike or an attraction to, if we're going to take some polar opposites for this, just to make life a bit simpler to understand. And they may not really be able to understand that, and it can play itself out in a dissociative way. So in OSDD, that might just be the sense of this feeling, either a strong attraction or a hatred, let's say, But within DID, if that part fronts, comes forward, the person dissociates, the part comes forward, they may actually enact verbal or physical behaviours that can lead to a lot of difficulty. So the person might actually start professing love or acting in a way which wants physical connection or intimacy with this other person, or they can say something negative, rude, hostile, threatening in order to move that person away. So we think in terms of the threat system and the survival system, they may be wanting to pull that person close, or they may be wanting to push that person away. And that, if this is done in a dissociative way, especially if amnesia is present, this can be enormously difficult to manage afterwards. And what the person, the subscriber, is saying is what they might be seeing is something like this. The husband is there, dissociates into a part. The part is then enacting a series of behaviours, could be action systems, sequences of behaviour towards another person that is about trying to bring them close, trying to achieve intimacy, trying to have an attachment need being met. And that can be very difficult and very problematic for people. And I have known folks, and I have known people, other people talking about DID and things where, sometimes these behaviours do get out of control. And it can be to do with anything. I mean, it's simply an extension of something that is needed. So whether a part is going into a supermarket and buying things that nobody else wants other than them, or they're saying something or behaving in a way to an individual that nobody else wants other than them, the setup, the actual process is exactly the same. It just has different needs are being met, or different survival instincts are being responded to. The point of this is that we need to understand that parts within, or alters or others within a dissociative system like DID or OSDD are capable of independent thought and independent action. They have to be, and that's a result of the dissociation, which is a result of the trauma. If they weren't independent, everything would be linked, and then the trauma would be open, and that really just isn't the point of dissociation. The point of dissociation is to keep things separate. So the person is here, the part is there, the part might independently be feeling and being attracted to, or feel a hatred towards a person that this individual, the one who runs this system, let's say, does not. Therefore, you have the conflict, and therefore you have this sense that the person and the part are not working in collaboration with each other. They're not really designed to, unless something comes in and builds that collaboration, which is where therapy comes in. Now, for me, if I feel something towards another person that seems a bit odd or a bit out of place, I can do that self-analysis. I can go back into my past, try and make sense of it, and then I go, okay, that's what that is, I'm completely fine, move on. Nice and straightforward. It's very difficult for a dissociative person to do that if there's amnesia, if there's a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge about the traumatic background, or just not really being able to make the links between the childhood experience and the adult behaviour and patterns of thought and feeling. And the therapist's job is to come in and try and tie all these things together, to make a formulation, to say, based on the experience and the impact of those experiences, here's where that behaviour is coming through. And if you begin to develop that understanding for it, that understanding then starts building a little bit of control and a bit of usual, notice, and you empathise, and then you try and guide and help and shape the feelings and the experiences in a much more functional way in everyday life. So it's not about rejecting these feelings, it's about trying to bring them in, to make sense of them and to understand them. So whether it is that we're just behaving in a way that we want to behave and our parts are just allowing us to behave in that way, or whether it's actually the parts are behaving in trauma mode or in attachment mode, and they are trying to seek a need being met, and they're doing that independently of everybody else. That's what the therapy is there to try and make sense of, and then develop a way of being able to handle that in everyday life. And I hear lots of stories where people say that they've had parts, being sort of like angry or being insulting or being overly generous and giving loads of gifts away, or trying to just go out of their way to do all these altruistic things, or to, rescue or help or do all of these things. And, while so much of it can be positive, so much can also be negative. Parts can get into fights, they can start fights, they can be shouting, they can be insulting, they can be rude, they can be critical, they can do all these kind of things. It's all dependent on the nature of the overall system and where that person is coming from, where their trauma and their attachment and all their experiences have led them to be, and all of these behaviors play themselves out. And it's enormously complicated sometimes trying to break it all down. And that's where help comes in. So while it's useful for people to look at their own behavior and think about the behavior of their parts and try and make sense of them, it is so much simpler to do that with a therapist who can be objective, who can stand away from that system, look in on it and formulate based on developmental processes, childhood experience, trauma, personality and identity development, and make sense of all of it. Once we've got a sensible proposition, formulation for what might be happening, it gives us a guide to how to act and how to manage that. And that's really why therapy is so important. Well, I always recommend that it's there. I know people can't always access it, but these are the sort of examples that are there to show how absolutely relevant and important a good therapeutic relationship is to try and work out what these parts or alters are doing, because they are communicating their needs, and they're often very primal, basic, very black and white, without restraint type needs, and that can make things very difficult and complicated. It also gives us insight into the nature of the traumatic experience. So it's got pros and cons attached to it, but I always recommend that therapy for this kind of stuff is absolutely useful and productive in working out what's happening for the individual and therefore the system as a whole. So again, I hope this has helped. I hope this has answered the question. Obviously, without doing a full assessment, without really understanding, there can only be guesses and hypotheticals. So what I'm saying here isn't this is what's happening. What I'm saying is this is a way of looking at it to try and make sense to see whether that's taking place or not. And if a person has DID, for example, then the likelihood is that there's an attachment-based, need-based setup going on in the background that's running that is potentially causing lots of difficulties, as well as maybe being useful, but these difficulties are absolutely paramount in this example. This is worth investigating further. So I hope this has helped. I hope this has given a little bit of an understanding about what some of the things might be happening. And I'll keep coming back to these sort of questions around like why are alters doing this and why are they doing that, because this really gives us the insight into the dissociative system. So I hope this has been helpful. Obviously leave comments, keep putting questions towards us on the channel. We do like picking up these questions and then making the videos on the basis of those. So please do keep them coming. And in between now and in the next video we make, please do take great care.